My name is George Sanderson, and it is a true pleasure to be your storyteller tonight. Before we begin our journey, take a moment. Find that perfect position, the one where you feel most comfortable and supported. Our story tonight is called Ciri and the Whispering Grasslands, and it begins now. The forest breathed around her. It was an old forest, one that had long ago forgotten the bite of an axe or the clamor of war. The air itself felt heavy with time, thick with the scent of damp, black earth and the sweet decay of fallen leaves. Light, when it found its way through the dense canopy above, did so in soft, shifting columns, like pillars holding up a silent green cathedral. The world here was a mosaic of moss and shadow. Ciri moved through it not with urgency but with a quiet reverence. Each step was a deliberate placement, her worn leather boots making only a soft thud on the mossy carpet that silenced the forest floor. She led her horse, a sturdy bay mare she simply called Roach, by the reins. The animal's presence was a warm and steady comfort, its occasional soft snort or the gentle creak of its leather saddle, a familiar percussion in the otherwise profound quiet. The sounds were part of the silence, not a disruption to it. For 3 days, this ancient wood had been her world. She had followed a barely there animal trail, a path written in the language of bent twigs and faint impressions in the soil. It was a skill Vesemir had insisted upon, not for hunting monsters, but for understanding the flow of a place. Every forest has its own currents, Ciri, his memory voice would murmur, as soft as the rustling leaves. Learn to feel them, and you'll never be lost. And so she followed the current, feeling it pull her steadily eastward. As dusk began to settle on the 3rd day, she found a place to make her camp. It was a small clearing, protected on 3 sides by the broad, gnarled roots of an ancient oak. She untied her bedroll and laid it out, the simple, practiced motions a meditation in themselves. Roach was tended to first, of course. Ciri ran a currycomb through the mare's thick coat, the rhythmic scraping sound a soothing mantra. She murmured to the horse, her voice low and soft, telling it of the day's quiet journey, of the fat gray squirrel she had seen, and of the strange pale mushrooms clustered at the base of a birch tree. The horse flicked an ear, content in the familiar ritual. With Roach happily munching on a patch of lush clover, Ciri turned to her fire. She didn't need a grand blaze, only a small circle of warmth and light to hold the deep shadows of the night at bay. She gathered dry kindling from beneath a rocky overhang, her fingers moving with an assured gentleness. A small, simple gesture of her hand, a whisper of a word she hadn't consciously thought, and a soft orange flame blossomed in the palm of her hand. It did not roar, it simply was. She brought the gentle flame to the heart of the kindling, and the fire sighed to life with a soft, crackling hum. She sat with her back against the warm leather of her saddle, watching the flames dance. The firelight threw her shadow, long and wavering, against the tapestry of roots behind her. This was the rhythm of her life now. Walk, observe, rest. The constant search for safety had been replaced by a quiet search for scenery. The need to fight had given way to a desire to simply be. Her silver witcher's medallion, a stylized cat's head, lay cool and still against her skin. Here, in the heart of this peaceful wood, it had not so much as trembled. It rested as she did. She awoke not to a sound, but to a change in the silence. The morning was cool and draped in a thick white mist that clung to the trees and muffled the world. But something was different. The dense, layered silence of the deep woods was gone. In its place was a new quiet, one that felt vast and open, and beneath it, almost too faint to be certain, was a sound she had never heard before. It was not a rustle. It was not the wind in the leaves. It was a low, continuous, and impossibly soft hum, a whisper that seemed to have no source and no end. Curiosity, gentle and unhurried, nudged her forward. She packed her few belongings with the same methodical calm as always, the mist swirling around her ankles as she moved. She led Roach out of the small clearing and continued east, following the pull of the new sound. The change in the landscape was gradual at first. The ancient oaks and towering pines began to thin, replaced by smaller, more scattered birch trees whose white bark shone like bones in the ethereal mist. The forest floor, once a deep carpet of moss and soil, became sandier, and the trees grew farther and farther apart. The canopy above dissolved, and for the first time in days, Ciri could see the sky, a vast, uninterrupted ceiling of soft gray. The humming grew louder. It was a chord, she realized now, a sound made of 1,000 tiny, whispering notes all woven together. It was a sound you felt in your bones as much as you heard with your ears. It was serene, hypnotic. She came to the edge of a gentle slope and the last of the trees fell away behind her, standing like silent sentinels at the border of a new world. Before her, stretching out to a horizon she could not see, lay the whispering grasslands. She drew in a slow breath, the air here feeling different, lighter, drier. It was an ocean, an endless sea of silvery green grass that rose to her waist. The mist was beginning to burn away under the rising sun, and she could see that each blade of grass was a unique thing, catching the diffuse light in a way that made the entire landscape shimmer with a soft, internal luminescence. And the sound, it came from them. The wind, which had been only a whisper in the forest, was a living presence here. It moved across the grasslands in slow, visible waves, and as it passed, it breathed through the countless hollow stalks of the siren grass, creating the constant, lulling hum that had drawn her here. The sound rose and fell in gentle crescendos, a symphony played by the land itself. Roach shifted beside her, her ears pricked forward, her nostrils flaring as she took in the strange new scent of the place. She was not frightened. Ciri could feel the horse's own placid curiosity, a mirror of her own. Ciri took a tentative step forward, leaving the shadow of the last tree behind. Her boots sank into a patch of what looked like dark moss, but it was softer, more yielding. It was a patch of glimmer moss, still holding the last vestiges of the night's cool temperature. The whispering of the grass seemed to grow a little louder, as if to welcome her. There was no path here. There was no trail to follow. There was only the gentle pull of the horizon and the endless, soothing song of the grasslands. She stood there for a long moment, a solitary figure on the threshold of an immense and peaceful mystery, simply listening. The forest was behind her. A new kind of journey was ahead. She decided to make her camp here for the day. on this border between two worlds, to simply sit and watch the light change across the vast, breathing landscape before her. Chapter 2: The Sea of Silent Light. Ciri spent the day on the cusp of two worlds. She sat with her back against the last of the forest's trees, her gaze lost in the vast, shimmering expanse before her. She did not venture in. Not yet. She simply listened, letting the rhythm of the grasslands seep into her. The sun journeyed across the immense, open sky, and the sound of the siren grass changed with it. In the cool of the morning, the hum was a low, resonant drone. As the day warmed, the sound seemed to climb in pitch, becoming lighter, more ethereal. 1,000 hushed conversations carried on the breeze. It was a place that taught patience. It did not invite you to hurry, it invited you to witness. When the sun began its slow descent, painting the western sky in strokes of soft orange and muted rose, she knew it was time. The forest behind her was already growing dark, its deep shadows pooling into an impenetrable blackness. But the grasslands seemed to hold the light, to drink it in. "Well, Roach," she murmured, her voice a soft puff of air in the cooling evening. "No sense in sleeping with one foot in the past." The mare nickered gently, nudging Ciri's shoulder with her nose. Ciri gave the horse a final, reassuring pat before taking the reins and stepping forward, leaving the shelter of the last tree for good. The sensation was immediate and profound. It was like wading into a calm, shallow sea. The tall, silvery grass parted around her legs with a soft, silken rustle. The sound of the world changed instantly. The whisper that had been a single, unified hum from the edge became a complex and layered symphony now that she was inside it. She could hear the individual notes of the grass beside her, the deeper tones from farther away, and the high, sighing overtones that seemed to live in the air itself. It was everywhere. It enveloped her, a gentle cocoon of sound. She walked for what felt like an hour, heading towards the heart of the fading light in the west. The ground beneath her feet was a strange and wonderful thing. The yielding cushions of glimmer moss became more frequent, and walking upon them was like treading on velvet. There was no jarring impact, no hard earth, only a soft, springy give and take with every step. With the forest gone, the world was reduced to three simple, calming elements: the endless grass, the vast sky, and the constant, soothing music of the wind. There was no need to rush. There was nowhere to be, except here. The sun, now a brilliant sliver on the horizon, cast her shadow long and sharp behind her, a single dark line in a shimmering, golden world. She watched it stretch, her own slow movement a part of the day's gentle closing ceremony. She found a place to rest in a shallow dip in the land, a natural basin where the hum of the grass seemed a fraction softer. The routine was the same, a comforting anchor in this new and alien landscape. She unburdened Roach, whose calm demeanor was a reassuring presence. The mare began to graze immediately, unfazed, her cropping sounds a close and familiar counterpoint to the land's immense whisper. Ciri laid out her bedroll, the dark wool a stark contrast to the silvery green of the grass. She sat for a moment, simply breathing. In, the cool, dry air scented faintly with something clean and mineral. Out, a small, white plume of her own breath. She did not build a fire. Here, with no wood to burn and no shadows to ward off. It felt unnecessary, almost intrusive. The fading ambient light felt like enough. And then, as the last sliver of the sun vanished and the sky deepened to a shade of indigo, the magic began. It started with a single, soft pulse of light near her boot. She thought her eyes were playing tricks on her. Then another pulse, a few feet away, and another. The glimmer moss, which had been a dull, dark green all day, was awakening. Within minutes, the floor of the grasslands was transformed. As far as she could see, the circular patches of moss began to breathe with a soft, internal light. It was not a steady glow, but a slow, silent rhythm, like the beating of 1,000 peaceful hearts. The light was a gentle white, tinged with the faintest hint of pale blue, and it cast no harsh shadows. It simply lifted the darkness, replacing it with a soft, ethereal luminescence. The world of sound had given way to a world of silent light. Ciri lay back on her bedroll, her head resting on her pack, and looked up. With no fire, no trees, and no competing light from the ground, the night sky was revealed in its full, staggering glory. It was a cascade of diamonds thrown across black velvet. Stars she had never seen, nestled in the dense star fields of the galaxy, blazed with a fierce, cold clarity. A memory surfaced, unbidden and welcome. It was of Yennefer on a cold, clear night at Kaer Morhen. Ciri had been young, overwhelmed by her power and her destiny. Yennefer had taken her out onto the battlements, away from the gruff lessons of the Witchers, and had simply pointed up. She hadn't spoken of chaos or magic, but of celestial mechanics. She had pointed out the constellations, her long, elegant finger tracing the shapes in the sky. She'd given them their proper names and then the names the common folk used. Her voice had been low and steady, a calming anchor in Ciri's turbulent world, and the air had carried her unique scent of lilac and gooseberries. "They are constant, little one," Yennefer's memory voice whispered. "Empires rise and fall. People love and lose, but the stars watch, they do not judge. There is a comfort in that kind of permanence." Ciri smiled softly at the immense, starry ceiling above her. Here, in the whispering grasslands, she understood what Yennefer had meant. The sheer scale of it all was not frightening, it was profoundly calming. Her own worries, her own past, felt small and distant under the gaze of a million silent, burning suns. Her silver medallion, warmed by her body heat, was a small weight on her chest. It was utterly still, its silence a confirmation of the peace she felt. She watched the silent ballet of light around her, the slow, gentle pulse of the glimglower moss on the ground, and the steady, ancient fire of the stars above. She was floating in a sea of silent light, cradled between the breathing earth and the timeless sky. Her own breathing began to slow, matching the rhythm of the pulsing moss. In, out, a wave of light, a wave of breath. All was quiet, all was calm. Chapter 3. The Stone Bells of the Plains. Ciri woke to a world of gray and silver. The night's brilliant stars and pulsing moss had faded, replaced by the soft, diffuse light of a pre-dawn haze. The air was cool and carried a fine mist that beaded on her woolen bedroll. The whispering of the siren grass was at its most subdued, a low and gentle drone that felt like the world's quiet breathing as it slept. She lay still for a long time, simply existing in the peaceful interim between night and day, feeling the gentle rhythm of the land. The morning ritual was a comfort, a small island of the familiar in this vast and wondrous sea of grass. She rose and stretched, her muscles moving with a slow, deliberate grace. She checked on Roach, who stood patiently nearby, her coat damp with dew. Ciri ran a hand down the mare's strong neck, her touch a silent reassurance. The horse responded with a soft, breathy snort, a simple conversation that needed no words. While Roach grazed on the tips of the silvery grass, Ciri ate a simple meal of dried fruit and hard bread, her quiet chewing a small, personal sound in the immense landscape. There was no map for this place, no path to follow. Her only guide was a gentle, internal pull, a sense of curiosity that drew her ever onward, deeper into the grasslands. She packed her few belongings, the practiced movements smooth and efficient. As she secured the last strap on her saddle, the rising sun finally broke through the haze and the grasslands ignited. The mist dissolved into golden light, and the whispering hum around her rose in pitch, greeting the new day with its timeless melody. She set out, walking beside Roach, venturing deeper into the shimmering plains. The day unfolded in a slow and peaceful rhythm. The world was a repetition of gentle sensations, the soft give of the glimmer moss under her boots, the silken rustle of the grass against her legs, the warm sun on her shoulders, and the constant, lulling whisper that filled the air. There was nothing to fight, nothing to fear. There was only the walking, the observing, the being. Her mind, freed from the need for constant vigilance, began to notice the smaller details. She saw the way the wind created eddies and currents in the grass, much like water flowing around stones in a stream. She noticed the subtle variations in the color of the grass, from a pale, almost white green in the shallow soils to a deep, rich silver blue in the low-lying areas. It was a language, and she was slowly, patiently learning to read it. It was mid-afternoon when she saw the first one. From a distance, it looked like a trick of the light, a tall, gray shadow that didn't seem to belong. As she drew closer, its form became clearer. It was a tall, slender stalk of what looked like stone, rising twice her height from the ground. It was smooth and gray, tapering as it rose, before flaring out at the very top into the unmistakable shape of a large, petrified flower bell. A stone bell. She had heard of them in travelers' tales, dismissed as fanciful legends, but here one stood, silent and ancient. She approached it with a quiet sense of wonder. She ran her hand over its surface. The stone was cool and impossibly smooth, worn down by centuries of wind and rain. It was a fossil, a perfect relic of a plant that had lived and died in a forgotten age. It stood alone, a monument to a time long past, its presence adding a deep, resonant note of history to the landscape. She continued her journey, and soon she saw another stone bell on the horizon, and then a third. They were rare, scattered across the plains like solitary watchtowers, each one a unique and silent sculpture carved by nature and time. They became her landmarks, her navigation points in the featureless sea of grass. As evening began to approach, the wind, which had been a steady companion all day, started to pick up. The whispers of the grass grew louder, the waves across the plains more pronounced. Ciri decided it was time to make camp. She found a spot in the lee of a small, natural rise, hoping it would offer some shelter from the growing breeze. As she was laying out her bedroll, a new sound reached her, carrying on the wind. It was not the whisper of the grass. It was a single, clear, and impossibly deep note. Bong. The sound was so low it was almost a vibration, a feeling in her chest. It hung in the air for a long moment before slowly fading, its resonance absorbed by the endless grass. Ciri stood perfectly still, her head tilted, listening. A minute passed. Then, from a different direction, farther away, another sound came. A different note, slightly higher, but just as pure and deep. Bong. It was the stone bells. The stronger evening wind was catching them just right, turning the ancient fossils into immense, natural chimes. The vast, whispering plains had become a colossal wind instrument, and she was standing in the very heart of it. She abandoned her task and simply stood, wrapped in the profound and beautiful music. The notes came at random intervals, from all directions, some near, some far. Each one was a perfect, solitary event, a deep and calming punctuation in the constant hum of the grass. It wasn't a melody of urgency or excitement. It was a slow, contemplative, and random composition played by the wind on instruments of stone. She eventually settled onto her bedroll, pulling her woolen blanket up to her chin. The glimmer moss began to awaken around her, its soft, pulsing light providing a gentle, visual rhythm to accompany the deep, resonant music of the stone bells. She closed her eyes, not to sleep, but just to listen more intently. The world was pure sensation. The cool air on her face, the soft wool of her blanket, the deep, echoing chimes of the bells, and the ever-present, whispering hum of the grass. It was a lullaby on a scale she could never have imagined, a song of stone and wind, sung just for her, in the vast and peaceful solitude of the plains. Chapter 4: The Sleeping Hills. The music of the stone bells lulled Ciri into a sleep, so deep it felt like a return to a place of ancient safety. When she awoke, it was to a world reborn in the soft, clean light of morning. The wind had gentled overnight, and the deep chimes had faded, leaving behind only the constant, foundational whisper of the siren grass. The air felt washed, clean, and filled with a profound sense of peace. She lay on her bedroll, watching the clouds drift in the immense sky. They were high, wispy formations, like streaks of fine powder, and their slow, inexorable journey across the blue expanse was hypnotic. She thought about the stone bells, their deep, resonant voices. A flicker of her analytical mind, a remnant from a life of constant assessment, questioned how mere wind on stone could produce such a pure and resonant tone. But then, a deeper understanding settled in her, as soft and natural as her own breathing. She understood then that the sound was not simply wind on stone. It was the stone itself, still holding a resonant, magical memory of the living plant it once was. The wind was not making the music. It was merely awakening it. This place was not bound by the mundane rules of the world she knew. Here, memories could have weight and sound. Here, peace was a tangible presence. The realization brought a soft smile to her lips. It did not need to be understood, only accepted. The morning ritual was unhurried. The routine of packing, of checking Roach's hooves, of sharing a piece of an apple with the mare, these were the small, grounding acts that stitched her days together. Each movement was familiar and mindful, a small prayer of presence. As she finally coiled the reins in her hand, ready to set out, she took a moment to look back the way she had come. There was nothing to see. The grasslands had swallowed her path. There was only the here and now, a concept that had once been a terrifying thing. but was now the very definition of freedom. She walked. The day was a canvas of gentle sensations. The sun warmed her hair and the back of her neck, a pleasant, soothing heat. The constant whisper of the grass was a presence so complete she almost ceased to notice it. The way one ceases to notice the sound of their own heartbeat. It was simply the sound of being alive in this place. The land began to change again, but this time not in kind, but in topography. The flat plains began to swell into long, low, rolling hills. They were smooth and featureless, great, soft humps in the earth, all of it covered in the same silvery green grass. The journey now involved slow, gentle ascents and long, equally gentle descents. With each new crest she reached, a new vista of the endless, whispering sea would unfold before her, vast and serene. It was on the downward slope of one of these hills that she saw them. At first, she thought they were just more hills, distinguished only by their slightly darker, stonier texture. But as she drew closer, she realized her mistake. They were creatures, dust turtles. She stopped, her hand resting on Roach's neck to still her. There were 3 of them, gathered in a shallow basin where the grass grew a deeper shade of blue. They were immense, each one the size of a small cottage, their shells not smooth but craggy and ancient, like living boulders. And they were not just stone. Their carapaces were so old and vast that they had become ecosystems unto themselves. Thick mats of glimmer moss clung to their surfaces, and clumps of siren grass grew in the deep crevices of their shells. They were not just living in the landscape, they were the landscape. They were utterly still. She watched them for a long time, trying to discern any sign of movement, but there was none. She wondered if they were merely empty shells, ancient relics like the stone bells. But then, as she watched the largest of the 3, she saw a slow, almost imperceptible shift. A great, wrinkled reptilian head, larger than she was tall, slowly extended from the front of the shell. Its eyes, ancient and clouded with cataracts the color of milk quartz, blinked once, a ponderous, geological movement that seemed to take a full minute to complete. The creature was not dead, it was sleeping. All 3 of them were, caught in a slumber that might last for days or seasons or centuries. They were not a threat. They were a presence of such profound and ancient stillness that Ciri felt her own heart rate slow just by looking at them. They were beings of pure patience. She decided to make her camp nearby, well within sight of the sleeping giants. She felt an inexplicable sense of safety in their presence. No harm could come to a place guarded by such immense and peaceful beings. She unsaddled Roach, who began to graze peacefully, utterly unconcerned by her colossal new neighbors. As dusk fell, the glimmer moss on the turtles' backs began to awaken. Soon, the 3 great shells were aglow, their soft, pulsing light illuminating them from within, turning them from sleeping hills into 3 gentle, living lanterns. A silent ballet of silken moths, drawn by the light, began to flutter and dance in the air above the turtles' shells, their wings catching the pale blue light. Ciri sat on her bedroll, wrapped in her blanket, watching the beautiful, silent spectacle. She felt like a guest in a secret garden, a witness to a magic that was quiet, ancient, and utterly at peace with itself. The whisper of the grass, the slow pulse of the light from the sleeping giants, the silent dance of the moths. It was another lullaby, one of stillness and light, and she let it carry her away. Morning arrived not as an event, but as a slow, silent turning of a page. The deep indigo of the sky softened to a gentle periwinkle, then to a soft, hazy gray. The pulsing of the glimmer moss slowed, its light paling, as the first hints of dawn began to glow on the eastern horizon. Ciri woke slowly, feeling as if she were rising from the bottom of a deep, calm ocean. Her first sensation was of profound stillness. The air was cool and motionless. Even the constant whisper of the grass was hushed, waiting. She opened her eyes. The great, sleeping hills of the dust turtles were still there, their ancient forms silhouetted against the growing light. They had not moved. Their slumber was a form of geology, a deep and patient stillness that made the entire landscape feel safe and anchored. She didn't feel the urge to pack, to move on. A quiet realization bloomed in her mind. As gentle as the dawn itself, she had been drawn here by a sound, by a sense of mystery, by the half-remembered legend of a heart of the hum at the center of the plains. She had pictured a place, a destination, a hidden grove, a magical spring. But as she sat there, wrapped in her blanket, watching the sky transform, she understood. The heart of the hum wasn't a place on a map. It was a state of being. It was the moment the music of the stone bells filled the air. It was the moment she felt the timeless gaze of the stars. It was here, now, in the silent, breathing presence of these ancient, sleeping creatures. She had been searching for a destination, but the journey itself had been the answer. The peace was not at the end of the path. The peace was the path. A gentle smile touched her lips. She had found it. She lay back down, pulling the warm wool of her blanket up to her chin. There was no need to go anywhere. No need to do anything. There was only a need to be. She closed her eyes, letting the world transform into pure sensation. The gentle coolness of the morning air on her cheeks, the comfortable weight of the blanket, a soft pressure that felt like an anchor holding her safely to the earth. The slow, deep rhythm of her own breathing, a quiet tide rising and falling in the stillness. The sun was rising now, and through her closed eyelids she could sense the light shifting from gray to a soft, warm gold. The warmth touched her face, a gentle caress. The land was warming. The air was warming. Everything was safe and soft and warm. The whisper of the siren grass began to return as the morning breeze stirred, but it was distant now, a background hum, a lulling drone, a sound that was part of the silence. All the sounds of the grasslands, all the sights of the journey, resolved into a single feeling, a feeling of peace. The feeling of the warm blanket, the soft ground beneath her, the slow, easy breath in her lungs, all was quiet, all was calm. The journey was complete. And here, in the heart of the hum, it was time to rest. All was safe, all was warm, quiet and calm, safe and warm.